So thank you, Lucilla, for this generous introduction. As you can guess, it is a daunting task to summarize the history of CEREGE, so I will try to do my best, and possibly, maybe all of you will be disappointed. I foolishly accepted this job, in fact, during one of our board meetings, so Lucilla approached me, and so I ask you for your indulgence, and of course, this is something that we can update in the future. It is, of course, impossible, in fact, to make an exhaustive panorama with only 1 minute for each year since the beginning. I mean, the official date of 1995. Rather, I will try to concentrate, in fact, my talk on a few important steps linked to the construction of the lab, of the CEREGE itself, and I will illustrate, in fact, my presentation with a few large scientific expeditions in the field. I will not go into the details of any of the studies that we generated since more than 30 years. But I would like to make a few comments and at the end some thoughts about the CEREGE itself and its creation. Today, the CEREGE has 5 supervising administrative authorities or governing bodies: Aix-Marseille University, AMU, CNRS, IRD, INRAE, and the Collège de France. They have changed over the past 30 years. For example, there were 3 independent Aix-Marseille universities that were merged in 2012 to form AMU. The IRD was called the Orstom at the time of the beginning. The INRAE was the INRA. The CNRS has changed many times its logo, which is about the changes it had been. And we love all of them, all of these governing bodies, especially because they provide salaries, in fact, for the various members of the CEREGE, either permanent or on contract money. However, what I would like to stress is that the CEREGE was not created as a top-down initiative by our governing bodies. Rather, it was created by individual scientists as a bottom-up process. And this is what I would like, in fact, to illustrate also in the talk. And so, unfortunately, as I said, it's not possible to mention all the people involved in this collective effort. Okay, some of you may be disappointed, but it is important to mention the key ones, the ones who prepared the CEREGE at the beginning, and the heroes of the creation, and who led, in fact, to the creation of a lab completely from scratch. In fact, there was nothing existing on the campus. I mean, there were rooms of a sanatorium, as I will try to illustrate in a minute. And the other big difference between now and then, and the early 90s, is that there was no internet at that time. So we were communicating differently, telephones, faxes, and there was no cell phones with camera to take pictures. I mean, today, many scientists, including here, in fact, spend their time taking selfies for social media, which takes time. I mean, it's important to communicate. While I prepared, in fact, this talk, I realized how poor, in fact, we are in pictures of the early days in Aix-Marseille, and also of the move between Marseille and the Ambre plateau. There are basically no picture of big trucks with old boxes that were spread around. So, as I said, there was no camera, so the only good pictures I have for this early day was taken from a book. In fact, so the CEREGE in itself, in a nutshell, is a lab that was created by Daniel Naon, Professor Daniel Naon at the University of Aix-Marseille, and a team of leaders with complementary expertise. As you can see here, these are pictures that I took, that I scanned, in fact, because they were not available otherwise. They were published in a 200-page book that was published by the tourist office of Marseille in '94. Believe it or not, I mean, I'm not sure that the tourist office of Marseille would do that again for science. It was concerning, it was for all sciences. And the column on the left that you see, and it's difficult to read, but I will try to help you in a minute, is the best document. In fact, this was the flyer published in 1994 about the proto-CEREGE in '94, just before we moved in '95 to the Ambre campus. So even, so these pictures represent, in fact, Daniel Naon, the creator of the lab, and as I said, there were other teams. In fact, the lab at that time was a federation, officially a federation of 5 units that were working on Earth and environmental sciences in Aix-Marseille. We had a lab, the LGQ, the Quaternary Geology Lab, that was led by the late Yves Lancelot. Environmental Geosciences, led by Daniel Naon. Magmatic Petrology Lab, led by Christian Coulon. There was also an ORSTOM, IRD today, unit led by Fabrice Collin. So all of these are summarized on this. These are the 5 units that were at the beginning of the CEREGE in this federation of units. And there was also the smallest lab was the geochemistry and geomagnetism unit that was led by Pierre Rochette and myself. And these 5 labs, under the leadership of Daniel, were merged into the CEREGE officially in '95, and we moved at Arbois. And in that book, it's interesting also, so you have pictures here, you can recognize Daniel Naon explaining things about, it's probably a piece of rock, I don't know, Daniel is here, he may be telling us what rock it was. You can see, you can barely recognize Bruno Hamelin in front of our first solid source mass spectrometer that was at that time installed in Saint-Jérôme, in the northern part of Marseille, in the north campus of the Aix-Marseille. You can recognize here Nicolas Touvny, who is in front, who was at that time working in Lumini, because one of the lab was in the south part of Marseille, Lumini, in front of the cryogenic magnetometer. And all these facilities were moved, in fact, in '95 to the Arbois campus. And so you have also a picture of Yves Lancelot looking at sediment cores, I think deep sea drilling or ODP sediment cores. We will mention that later in the talk. And yeah, I added a picture because it was not in the book, because he came slightly later. So last but not least, in fact, you have this picture of Jean-Yves Bottero, who joined directly on the Arbois campus. So obviously, this new lab was created, as I mentioned, in fact, it was really a bottom-up initiative by key individuals under the leadership of Daniel. It was not something that was prepared and decided somewhere elsewhere in Paris or in other governing bodies. But of course, these governing bodies were important after that, and it was our task, in fact, to convince us, to convince them, in fact, to fund us for creating, in fact, the CEREGE and adding the positions, the salaries, and also the main cost at the time was, and the main thing at the time was to find a place to merge, in fact, all those labs that were small at that time, but they were still quite large enough that we had to look for a big place, in fact, to put them. And over the few years before, in fact, '95, there were some hesitation, in fact, so I don't want to go into the details, but there were basically 3 sites that were in discussion. One was to put the CEREGE in Lumini. The other solution was that was also explored with the politicians because obviously when you deal with such a massive construction, you have to deal with the local politicians. You have the mayor of Marseille, the mayor of Aix-en-Provence, the president of the région, the deputy, and of course they always disagree. For example, one of the problems with Aix-Marseille is that it is Aix-Marseille, and the two towns always compete with each other. So putting a lab, I mean, it was a crime at the beginning because all the science were spread, all the science labs were spread in Marseille. The clean people, you know, jurists, historians, and everything like that, economists, were in Aix-en-Provence. And having to put a lab of earth science and environmental science that was rising in terms of concern, to put that in Aix-en-Provence officially was really a challenge. And this is the reason why it was not possible to have an agreement with all the parties, the politicians, the local politicians. So that's something that should be written at one point, but anyway. So many difficulties, but in the end, and thanks again to Daniel, he managed, in fact, to convince enough people to fund us and help us in building, in fact, this CEREGE. And obviously, the other thing that is very important for the whole thing was the location, the Arbois Sanatorium that was actually built 50 years further back in time, in fact. So the success of the CEREGE is also linked to this Arbois campus. So you can see here, you have on the top picture, you see a general picture of the Arbois. It was taken actually on the roof of the Trocadero building. And you can see, I mean, the CEREGE is right here. You have the Laennec. And this is the, you recognize the place for all the people from CEREGE. And you can see here one of our, at that time it was almost a ruin when we first visited it in the early 90s. And you can see that it has a special, typical Art Deco style. And the walls are built with cut stones made of Urgonian Cretaceous limestone. As you can see that. I mean, you can see. And the left picture is, again, it was at that time in 1934 when it was created. It was a sanatorium. And you can see here a picture with sick people suffering from tuberculosis, lying on deck chairs and breathing fresh air from the Plateau de l'Arbois. And you can see also these terraces. You can see them very clearly on this picture of one of our main buildings now of the CEREGE. And you can see that everything was open with these terraces. So when you work in these offices or labs, you could think about all the people who were suffering at that time. During the Second World War, the sanatorium was transformed into a hospital for the French army during the war. And then it later became an orphanage until it was more or less abandoned in the 80s. Okay, so you have the very typical cut stones that we see on all the old buildings. So these are a few other pictures of the Arbois Sanatorium, again created in 1934. You have another view here. This is taken from the Laennec building, when you have similar deck terraces where the people were lying. And you have, they were also sometimes enjoying themselves, watching theater shows and movies. And they were doing that precisely here in this original amphitheater where we are sitting today. Okay, so it's, okay, we can consider this. And one particular aspect of the Arbois campus and the construction is that it was constructed by a famous architect in Marseille, Gaston Castel, who got several prizes, like the Prix de Rome. And he made several buildings in Marseille, such as the Opera, and more famous or infamous is the prison des Baumettes, And yeah, a few pictures of the prison. This is the front gate, the front entrance. Here you have the wall, and you have the construction of the prison itself. And you can see exactly the same architecture as in Arbois, with the same cut stones that were used, in fact, for constructing, in fact, our buildings. So just a personal aspect. I mean, I was elected professor in Aix-Marseille in '91, and my activities were spread, in fact, between Saint-Jérôme, the Saint-Jérôme campus, especially collaborating with Bruno, working on the solid source mass spectrometer, and the campus of Lumini to work with Frauke, on Frauke Rostek, on organic geochemistry, and other colleagues, of course. And so at that time, I was living in Marseille in the quartier de Mazargues, and not very far from the Calanque National Park, which you all know, and where I spent many weekends. And to join the Calanques by foot, I mean, we were used, in fact, to walk along the Baumettes prison wall, and which is represented here. And I was always impressed, in fact, by the sculptures that were representing, in fact, the 7 deadly sins. You can see them here. So you have wrath, sloth, greed, gluttony, envy, pride, and lust. And so actually the old prison, this building, was destroyed only a few years ago. And so I don't know where these sculptures have gone. It would be nice, in fact, to get them and maybe put them on the CEREGE building, as they should apply also to scientists. So this recommendation. But anyway, so this is a typical architecture, and just coming back, in fact, to the construction, the refurbishing of the CEREGE. This is one of the few pictures that really is illustrating what was going on in '94 and started in '93. Actually, you can see one of our main building from this side. I mean, where you can really see here. They were taken by Michel de Cobert, so I thank him for that. And on the top one, you can really see the old building with the cut stones, very rough, not clean at all, and the new wings that were added that are white. The right picture, I mean, here you have the front picture of the CEREGE. There was no vegetation at the time, not much, and this is also one of the helicoidal stairs that is very typical of Art Deco. And the right picture, yeah, it shows also the terraces. When we arrived, these terraces were still functional. And then they were closed, the whole building was closed with glass and metal walls. About 10 years after, we continued, in fact, on the campus to refurbish and get new, try to acquire a new building. So this is something that we did in 2004 for the Trocadero building, which was refurbished, in fact, to host the team of the Collège de France and its equipment in partnership with the CEREGE. And we then installed in that lab, in the geochemistry labs, facilities for molecular organic geochemistry, for high-resolution elemental scanning of sediment, for beryllium extraction from ice cores, for example. So all of this is now set up in this building that was also refurbished later. And there were also new constructions. For example, in 2006, before the official opening in 2007, there was the construction of a new building to host the Accelerator Mass Spectrometry National Lab with Aster, with the Aster facility, under the leadership of our regretted colleague Didier Bourles, who you can see here. And Didier arrived in 1998 as a ex-Marseille professor. And you can see the building in the woods with Aster. This was the arrival of the big tank containing SF6. And you have a few pictures. For example, here you have those two stages of the tandem accelerator. You can see a picture. I mean, here in the you can see the back of Maurice Arnold. At that time, I see Bob Finkel who is in the audience, so he was also participating to the early days of this development of the IMS lab that was officially inaugurated a year later. There were also other activities in refurbishing labs. I mean, it's a complicated story, the link with the IMBE for working on soils, but in 2007, there were labs were refurbished in the Laennec building, and for the installation of a mass spectrometer dedicated to stable isotopes of organic matter. And this was, I mean, it was the initiative of our regretted colleague Jérôme Balédan. And this lab was upgraded, in fact, later on in 2023 with a new facility. And the INRAE became one of the 5 governing bodies in 2018. So in 2014, we continued, in fact, to construct new building on the campus. For example, we constructed a new wing to the Trocadero to host another IMS facility, smaller, but still useful for the radiocarbon, to host what we call ex-Micadas. So this is you can see the laying of the foundation stone at that time, and the facility itself, and the new building that was added, in fact, to the Trocadero, and with a smaller accelerator with a 200 kilovolt acceleration voltage, and most importantly, a gas source, so we can go down, in fact, the size of the sample size. I jump because time is evolving. In 2024, in fact, and inaugurated, in fact, actually this year, only a few weeks ago, there was also the construction of a new building, a new hall, which is called the CEREGE Hall. It's called the CEREGE Hall for Center for Innovation and Research in Environment and Eco-Technologies. And the same year as the construction, I mean, it's not installed in it, but the same team was also receiving the most sophisticated XRF microscope at CEREGE, Atomap, which was also installed and inaugurated, in fact, last year. And as I said, and as I stressed, and as also Lucilla warned you at the beginning, it's difficult to be exhaustive in this presentation, so it's impossible. So I invite all of you, in fact, to consult the official timeline, la frise chronologique du CEREGE, which is just outside, on the walls outside the amphitheater. And so you can consult it. It is also on our website. And in this timeline, you will read more about 23 hallmark events that shaped, in fact, the CEREGE over more than 30 years under the leadership of 7 directors. So here you have a few, so since the creation, you have also the chalet. I mean, I just included here only a few of them. The chalet building for geomagnetism and rock magnetism. You have also the first studies in planetology of in 2001 of meteorites. You have also the creation of the stable isotope lab in 2001, 2014, the complete refurbishing of the clean lab, and the installation of a ICP-MS. And all this can be read, and even more, in fact, because this is not 23 events here. You can read that directly on the website and also outside this hall. And there were, as I said, 7 successive directors: Daniel Nahon, then Pierre Choucroune, Bruno Hamelin, Jean-Yves Bottero, Nicolas Touveney, Olivier Bellier, and Lucilla Benedetti since a few years. So this was the first part of my presentation, and as I said, it's impossible to give you precise studies because there are too many beautiful. We were too successful in a way. It's impossible to go into any detail of anything that was performed, but I think that it's completely understandable. But I will try to illustrate the science of CEREGE also by the fact that the science that is developed here concerns, in fact, the entire Earth and beyond. So you can work also in the lab, but also for most of what we are doing, we are obliged, in fact, to go in the field, either close to the lab or very far, even beyond the Earth, with planetology. And it implies, in fact, fieldwork expedition everywhere on the planet, on all continents from the equator to Antarctica for the CEREGE. So this often implies heavy logistics, and I will mention a few of these heavy logistics expedition, of course, very similarly to all the labs that were created, the studies that were generated by the different members. It's not possible to mention all the field expeditions that were performed, but I would like to mention a few key aspects of the fieldwork that is performed here. Here is a picture just to mention that the members of the CEREGE have organized and participated to many coring expeditions on board the Marion Dufresne, the research vessel, especially using deep sea sediment cores taken with this giant piston core. And it was everywhere in the world ocean. And obviously, using piston cores is not enough if you want to go back in time. And in order to explore and to go further back in time, especially beyond the Quaternary era, the members of the CEREGE have embarked on board the research vessel JOIDES Resolution and have studied or are still studying ODP sediments. So it's important. So this is the JOIDES Resolution, as you know. One key mention also linked to ODP is the fact that CEREGE members also organized a prominent fieldwork that was an expedition offshore Tahiti. It took place about 20 years ago, but we are still busy analyzing samples and publishing the results. I mean, we published part of it. I mean, there were some very prominent papers that were published in about 10 years ago, but this is a process that is still continuing, and the samples are available for further work. The other thing that is quite important in terms of sampling and expedition is that the CEREGE members are very interested, in fact, by continental sediments, especially from lakes. And the members of CEREGE, even with the equipment, the drilling equipment at CEREGE, were very active in drilling, in collecting new sediment cores in France and elsewhere on the planet. So here, everywhere, I mean, in Europe, Africa, Asia, and America, all those cores are stored now on the campus. Here you have a picture of the coring of Lac Saint-Front that was led by Nicolas Touveny. And just to mention also some heavy logistics of an expedition, I mentioned also the recent scientific observation with submarines that were performed offshore Corsica a few years ago. Ever since the beginning of the CEREGE, many scientists have been interested in ancient humans and societies in their changing environment. This is really a key thing, I mean, since the beginning of the CEREGE, even before. And one of our heroes is our regretted colleague Maurice Tayeb, who you see here, who co-discovered Lucy in Ethiopia. So you have a picture of Lucy. I think that she's in the headlines at the moment, because there were new discoveries of Australopithecine recently. So Maurice was the co-discoverer of Lucy in Ethiopia, and he worked actively also with other CEREGE members, notably Raymond Bonnefille, specialist in palynology. There was also another key hominin fossil that was associated with the CEREGE. This is Toumaï, that was found in Chad by Michel Brunet, and it was dated at CEREGE with beryllium-10. I mean, in 2007, Aster, our national facility, just was starting to be tested, and so the AMS for Toumaï were measured on the Tandetron in Gypsy-Rivet, but the chemistry was performed here. And I wanted also, so this is an illustration of the Toumaï school and the fact that it was dated at 7 million years before the present with beryllium-10. And the other thing became much later, but more recently, in fact, human bones from several famous prehistoric sites were dated by carbon-14, measured with ex-Micadas. In 2019, in fact, part of the chemistry, part of the sample pretreatment was performed in Leipzig. Today, we are able to perform all the steps in the lab. And the other thing that, by preparing this talk, I mean, it's not fortuitous, in fact, that both of these studies, both collaboration with Michel Brunet and the other one is a collaboration with Jean-Jacques Hublin, were performed in collaboration with professors from the Collège de France, Jean-Jacques and Michel Brunet. The other thing that I wanted to stress by showing this picture is that we are at CEREGE also interested by all these aspects, but geoarchaeology at CEREGE especially goes beyond dating. I mean, our various expertise in mineralogy, geochemistry, and geophysics are also used to characterize paleo-environment and also human artifacts. So this is something I don't have time, in fact, to mention in detail, but this is quite important also. So now, when we try to make a summary and to see if what was the impact of the CEREGE since its creation, it's always difficult and a matter of debate. I mean, the scientific research at CEREGE is, first of all, published in the international peer-review literature. Of course, a quantitative assessment of the impact of papers is not always an accurate science, and it can be biased. So I will not present any bibliometric statistics. However, I will just illustrate our status. I mean, just to illustrate that we are proud of also our achievement. I will just illustrate our status in a recent ranking that is actually disseminated every year. And I will just mention, in fact, the case for earth sciences. We have chemistry, we have also environmental sciences, but most of the CEREGE people, in fact, correspond and are evaluated in this frame. And this is a ranking of the different universities, and they are labs that are not connected to universities or are not considered as universities, such as the IPGP, for example, in this ranking is not considered as a university, so it doesn't appear. But I would like to mention that AMU Aix-Marseille University is regularly ranked as in fourth position among French universities, and this is actually the best ranking of AMU in all sciences. Okay, so it has to be remembered. We are quite strong, and we should tell that to our governing body, especially the president of the university. And I would like also to mention that the 3 French universities that are above AMU in earth sciences, they benefit, in fact, from the cumulative influence of 2 or more labs that have the size of the CEREGE. For example, the Grenoble University has 2 labs, ISTER and IGE, that are quite strong. And so this is a collective influence that is summed up in this. And it's even worse for Paris, where you have several labs. In the case of the CEREGE, the ranking is solely based on the CEREGE output and achievements. So CEREGE is not only science, it's also teaching, because the second E of the CEREGE stands for enseignement, teaching at Aix University. And this is really a strength of the CEREGE since '95, since the beginning. with teaching. I mean, it is also difficult for the faculty members because we had, I mean, I no longer teach at the Aix-Marseille University, but the faculty members have to teach on different campuses spread in Marseille, Aix-en-Provence. But fortunately, since only a few years, we have a dedicated building for teaching. The two pictures that are shown here show the opening of the Beltram building on the campus in 2021. So undergraduate and graduate teaching can now take place directly on the campus. Another aspect that is quite important for what we are doing, besides teaching university students, the CEREGE members are very active in communicating in various modes, with various modes of public outreach to communicate, in fact, the science, their science and science in general. And this includes efforts such as La Fête de la Science, which is aimed at children of local schools. It takes place generally in October of each year. And also notable, I mean, you have a variety of efforts of outreach activities. We have movies, videos, exhibits, either permanent or just for some time, public lectures and public events. As a single illustration, because I could illustrate that for an entire hour, I show you here a few pictures of the permanent museum linked to the Cosca cave replica in the Villa Méditerranée in Marseille. So you have in this Villa Méditerranée, which is shown here, and here you can see the Bonne-Mère, the church, I mean, in the window. La Majeure, pardon. La cathédrale La Majeure, j'y suis allé une fois. Just next to this building, the Villa Méditerranée. And so the replica of the Cosca cave, I mean, probably all of you have seen it. I mean, but I recommend that you try to see it if you haven't, is in the basement of this building, and on the main building is actually occupied by a museum about sea level changes and climate changes over time. And we helped, in fact, to format, and we even have some objects, such as, for example, here you can see some corals from Tahiti that were officially landed to the lab by Pierre Deschamps, I think. And this is an illustration of, with a few pictures of showcases. We contributed, in fact, to explaining the sea level and climate change over time to the people who are visiting, in fact, this replica of the Cosca cave, because you know the history of the Cosca cave and its future are intimately linked, in fact, to the past and future sea level changes. So this is about what I wanted to show you as a panorama of activity, and of course, it's frustrating because I did not enter in any of the detail of any scientific study that we love. We will hear about science more in detail in a minute during these next 2 days. But I think it's, I wanted, in fact, to show you since the beginning. And I will end up with some, because there is no conclusion in my talk, I will instead try to provide, in fact, a few take-home messages. And the first one is to stress that that constructing a new science lab from scratch, from nothing, is really a commitment over many years of preparation and realization with myriad primes. I tried, in fact, to evaluate how many years, in fact, of career we lost in accepting this proposition by Daniel to join him in the 90s. But in the end, the pros are probably larger than the negative aspect. But I mean, it came also with negative aspect. The main advantage was that it provided us with complete freedom in contrast to continuing in an established lab, which is offering the legacy of decades of previous work. And of course, building the CEREGE was a collective effort with many unsung heroes, scientists, other scientists, faculty members, postdocs, PhD students, engineers, technicians, administrators. We can't work without all of them. And the good thing, the good aspect of it is that this success story continues with the new generation of scientists and other members, which are now more able to focus on their new projects that are sponsored either by French or European academic funders and also by selected private donors. But I think that the CEREGE members should also, and we collectively do that, we should also remain combative, in fact, to expand the lab with additional surfaces to host new analytical facilities. And it will be always in a bottom-up process with our governing bodies. We can't take that for granted that suddenly somebody will tell us, okay, there is a building here, take it because it's not used. We need to be aggressive and try to convince our governing bodies, but we need to root that in the science that we are doing. And the ultimate goal is to strengthen and diversify the CEREGE science and improve, if possible, its ranking among French and international institutions. So with these few words, I would like to close my lecture, and I thank you for your attention. And I leave you with a picture of the campus with all the different buildings that I mentioned during my talk. Thank you very much.